How's it going? Ooh, what's up, Mike? How many of you guys had a fantastic Valentine's Day? Like 3 of you. Awesome. My wife decided that she was going to go check out that revival thing in Kentucky. And, right, it's in Kentucky? Is that where she's at? I don't know. So I didn't get to see my wife on Valentine's Day. Sad, everyone. Aww. Thanks. And so last night, she's been gone. She comes back today. But last night, I was making myself some dinner, and because she was gone, I reverted back to the previous days of before I was married. And so I decided the best thing I could possibly eat is Velveeta mac and cheese. So I made it. I cooked the noodles. And Tim Lund makes these fantastic mac and cheese. And so I start thinking harnessing the inner Tim, how much water per noodle. I'm starting to do these ratios in my head. And so I think I finally got it right. And so I grab a noodle to check to see if it's right. And I take a bite of it, and the water from the spatula burnt the bottom of my lip. So bad last night. So needless to say, it's Natalie's fault that I haven't been doing good. We have been, like Pastor Dave said, in a series about vision. Where is this church going? What are we planning on accomplishing over the next year? And the very first week, we kind of talked about how God is a builder. We talked about how God is planning to build the church numerically, and we're going to do that through memberships. We are completely revamping what membership looks like. We're not going to do grow tracks anymore, but instead we're doing membership nights, membership classes, and it's just going to be a one-night thing. Our first one is March 5th, so if you want to be a member, check that out. You're not going to want to miss that. But membership, God is going to grow the church numerically, but he's also going to grow the church physically, and one of the big projects that we are trying to accomplish over the next year is bathrooms. If you haven't checked out our blueprints, our little renders that we have, go ahead and check them out after service. But we are super excited for the fact that we no longer have to walk 17 miles to go to the bathroom. Then last week, we talked about missions. So really, it was this whole idea of go, right? And so we want to be a church that is known as go, that we are missionaries to our community, but Refuge will always be a place where we value missionaries who are serving God around the world. And so that is a key aspect of who we are, and part of the vision that we have for this upcoming year is that we want to increase the amount of missionaries that we support. And so the last piece of our vision is family. Now, I thought it was funny that my family, other than my dad, decided not to come today because I'm all alone. It's okay. I'm just messing with you guys. I'm not. No. But I thought it was interesting because, honestly, when I wrote this message, I started to think how unqualified I am for this. Have you guys ever gone into a situation or a subject where you feel inadequate or not qualified or whatever? Has anybody ever lied on a resume? That's one of my favorite videos going around right now. Someone does something really dumb, and they're you can tell they lied on a resume. But for me, family was always one of the things that I looked into. It wasn't something that I was a part of. And so I kind of felt like maybe I was inadequate, and then God kind of checked me. And he said, it's not so much about what you've lived through, but it's who has lived in you. See, it's not that I can talk to you about all the cool things that my parents did or all the things that we should do. This isn't like a master class on family. This is simply principles. And see, I think it's interesting that God decided to give us a book of principles and not a book of rules. Because anytime rules are established, we will break them. Yeah. That is just how we are. Yeah. But principles live inside of us. And those principles are things that are deep-rooted inside of our hearts. And when we live by those principles, when we establish ourselves and base our foundation on those principles, life goes well. And so it's not so much that I want to stand up here and try to proclaim to you how much I know about families and how to raise your kids and all that kind of stuff. I've been a dad for like 22 seconds. So obviously I know what I'm doing. But I do think that God has given us a foundation to stand on and principles to live by, and that's what I want to look at today. How many of you guys love board games? I'm so glad you're here today, because literally, like, you're in my sermon. Some people love board games. People like Jordan absolutely love board games. And in fact, they taught me a board game it's not really a board game, but while we were camping last year, and it's called Bang. And like Bang is one of my favorite games now. I actually bought it. I think it's in French or something. Like, it's not even English. But it's a really fun game. But if you were to ask me, are you a board game guy? I would probably say, I'm iffy, right? There are some games that I absolutely love, and then there are some games that I think are obnoxious. I absolutely cannot stand. And when I started to think about it, the reality of it is, it's not that I hate certain board games, I just don't like not knowing the rules. And honestly, I hate not knowing the rules enough where someone has to explain to me through the game what's going on. I mean, part of it's a trust issue. Like, are they just lying to me so that they win this game, you know? Like, Monopoly, like, oh, when I go around I get $7,000, but when you go, you get $20. You're like, why? Because I'm the top hat. Like, you're lying. But inside of us, there's this whole idea that, like, when we don't truly understand the game, we retract back and revert back to other people's expertise. And I think that's one of the things that we do in our families. We don't really understand the rules or the foundation of family. And so instead, we revert back and we look to people who have done it before, and sometimes that's great, and sometimes that's really bad. We look to books, and sometimes books are fantastic, and sometimes they're really bad. We look to the internet. Internet's always bad. Like, the internet will always steer you wrong. But I think it's interesting that oftentimes, especially as Christians, we don't look back to what the family is defined in the Bible. Now, I scoured the Bible and I thought of all these fantastic verses that we could go over and, you know, that would really hone in on this concept of family. But then God said, just go back to where it started. Go back to where the family was created. And so today I want to spend a little bit of time in Genesis. If you don't know where Genesis is, open the front page and there you are. You made it. We're going to be in Genesis chapter 2, and we're going to start, we're going to kind of be all over chapter 2. But this is kind of the creation story of mankind. Now, God makes Adam, right? And he's having a conversation with Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And he says, let us make man in our image. How many of you guys have heard that before and kind of just blown past it? Let us make man in our image. Now, I thought it was interesting. From the birth of humankind, God said, I am going to create man in my image, and not just my image, our image. God is a triune God. That means there is 3 in 1. And so God, from the beginning, decided that this was going to be a partnership, something that is going to be multifaceted and not just an individual. He said, let us make man in our image. Right? We've all heard things like body, soul, and spirit, right? We are body, soul, and spirit. 3. But not just that, we are man, wife, children. From the inception, God said, the family will be in the mirror image of what I am creating. It is going to be who I am and what I've put into you. And so, in Genesis, it goes through this whole idea of we are going to create man in our image. And Adam begins to formulate, and then I picture it like this. I like to read the Bible in pictures, so walk with me, cool? Adam and God are walking through the garden, and God says to Adam, I am giving you dominion. I'm giving you dominion over all of the animals, all of the fish, all the birds, all of the sea. I'm going to give you dominion. Now, That's an interesting way to phrase that, right? It's an interesting thing to say, I have just made you in my image, and now I'm going to release control over the things that I have created for the authority that you have on this earth. Imagine the smile on Adam's face. Imagine the joy that he now gets to have control of, dominion over things that he did not even create. And God begins to look at him and says, I want you to name everything. I want you to give a name to the birds in the sky and the fish in the sea and the animals. And do you picture it like this? Like, do you picture like God and Adam walking through the garden and Adam's like, that's a deer. Oh, that's a trout. Right? He gives him the ability to begin to name things. Now, in our own families, God blessed me with a son. I didn't make that son. He did. He's a gift from God. That's right. But he didn't actually have, he wasn't a part of my family until the people from the birth certificate office said, what's his name? I said, Dutton Allen Blittell. And as soon as I named him, not only do I have dominion over him, because he's mine no matter what. There's a responsibility no matter what. But all of a sudden, he went from being a child to my son. He had identity in me because it's not just about dominion. It's not just about having power. It's about caring for what we are controlled over. And I think this is one of the things that we miss out when we start to talk about families. I think this is one of those things that we begin to forget about because we like to hear these stories about how we are in charge. God has set us apart. That's true. But he's not going to give you authority or dominion over something that he hasn't also entrusted care over. And so Adam begins to name things, and then God says one of the most profound things in the Bible right off the bat. It says, man needs a helper. He should not be left alone. Now, I can't prove this part, but up until this point, death had not entered the world. That is a man that cannot die by himself. This fool is probably trying to rope sharks at this point. I think, like, a lot of people read this and they think, like, oh, Adam's just kind of sitting by himself, like, oh, he needs someone to help him. No, I think God is, like, watching Adam, like, trying to lasso a bear, and he's like, that guy needs some help. And so we know the story, right? He puts Adam to sleep, and from a rib, he creates one man. Right, the helper, the one that is designed to help the man in all of the things in life. And the Bible goes on and says this. If you're reading along with me, I'm going to be in chapter 2, verse 24. Therefore, a man will leave his father and his mother and be joined with his wife, and the two will become one flesh. They were both naked, and the man and his wife, but they were not ashamed. That's like quoted a ton in wedding ceremonies. We've heard that before, yes? God created man and woman. They were supposed to be joined together, and they were supposed to become one. And they're not supposed to be ashamed of one another. Right. Now, it's interesting. The very next verse that goes into chapter 3, it says this. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast in the field, which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, has God said, you shall not eat from any tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat from any of the fruit from the trees in the garden, but from the fruit of the tree which God is in the midst of in the garden, God had said, you will not eat from it, nor will you touch it, or else you will die. Did you catch it? It literally went from they were both naked, the man and the woman and his wife, or the man and the woman, his wife, and they were not ashamed. The very next sentence, Satan enters the picture. Why? because the family unit was designed from the beginning to be the implementation of the image of God on earth. And Satan knew that was too powerful to combat. So the very first act that Satan does, Adam, Eve get married, Satan enters the picture. From the beginning, marriages have been under attack. From the beginning, families have been under attack. And yet today we want to sit back and talk about how culture this and culture that. Don't get me wrong. Culture is devastating right now. Some of you guys watched the Grammys a few weeks ago. Oh my gosh, I can't believe some of the things that we're seeing. But it's not culture's fault. That was the design from the beginning. And the enemy had a plan that if he could disrupt the family unit, if he could disrupt the family from the inception of it, that everything that he wanted to do, all the distraction, all the disruption, and all the devastation, those three things would only be possible if he could get between the thing that he wanted to do and the image of God. And it was in that moment Satan decided to enter the picture. Now, some of you may look at that and go, okay, maybe that's a coincidence. And I don't know about you, but for me, the battles that I faced as a single man were completely different than the ones that I faced as a married man. Now, if you're single in this room, this doesn't mean that what you're dealing with doesn't have value. But the moment that you have the responsibility of a family on your shoulders, Satan is going to do everything he can to get between you and God. Why? Because he doesn't want you to reflect the image of God that he created it to be. Friends, we can't sit here and try to just blame the culture. Why? Because the culture wasn't the reason it got devastated in the first place. We have to be able to look at this and go, this was God ordained, this was God designed. And anything that God has a design for, anything that God created, he has to put a manufacturer warranty on it. And just because sometimes it's broken doesn't mean that it can't be fixed, but what it does mean is we need to stop going to places that never created it in the first place and hoping that we get in return a fixed package. That's not how it works. If God created it, he will put a warranty on it. And that warranty was not culture, it was not friends, it was not other people, it was to go back to the source. Friends, families have retracted and belittled themselves to a point where they don't even understand that their power and authority comes from the one above. Now, God set up this structure, right? He created man, and he had dominion. And I know that this is a hot topic issue right now, but men, hear me. Your position in your family is to lead. Doesn't mean have control over it. Doesn't mean you're just making all the decisions. It means to lead in the best interests of your family. Today, we shy away from that. We want to pretend that men can't be men. Now, hear me out. Please, I'm not trying to start a fight. I'm really not. If you have any complaints, the email is dbliss@refugeonline.com. But when we take away one of the pillars that was made to support the foundation and the structure of the family union, we can't wonder why it's crumbling. We can't. See, we've taken away the man and decided that that part is offensive. And because of that, we are going to wipe it away, and then we wonder why the building is toppling and then falling over. Now, men, hear me. Dominion, how it was set up in the beginning, wasn't dictatorship. Notice that? Yeah. Notice that it wasn't a dictatorship. God didn't look at Adam and said, you have control over all of the land and whatever you say goes. No, that goes back to God. But he did say the things that have names, take care of them. The things that you have control over, influence over, the things that have your fingerprints on them, take care of them. Lead them in the ways of the Lord. And if we do that, we are honoring God with everything that we have. Now, again, I've only been married for a few years, so I'm not going to sit up here and try to pretend I know everything. But I do know that in order for us to have healthy relationships, we have to have all of the pieces in place. Now, it's interesting because the Bible lays out this foundation in the very beginning. The very first book of the Bible, the family unit is put in place and established. Now, if you guys have read the Bible, you guys know that basically the rest of this book is how the family fell apart. And if you get to the back, towards the back of the book in Acts chapter 3, we start to hear about a new family arising. See, God knew that the family structure was falling apart, and we needed a new image of God, and so all of a sudden, he instills the church. It's funny how the Bible uses terminology just like how he does for a family for his church, right? The church is Jesus' bride, right? We are his kids. So, from the beginning of the church, God again sets up the structure of what we're going to do. And so he talks about having leaders of the church, fathers of the church, the apostles, the pastors, the evangelists. All of these people were set up to be the leadership of the church. But a leader can only lead something that has followers. And so it goes leaders, members, that's you guys. And then it goes the community in which we are trying to reach. Right. Notice how God always works in threes. He established it once again in a form of three. He established a leadership structure. He established who we are supposed to lead and where we are supposed to go. And so today I want to take a couple minutes and talk about some of the things that, of the places and the things that we are supposed to go and what we're going to do in our vision for 2023. The first part of our family vision is this, our kids program. How many of you guys know that Lisa Bliss absolutely crushes it? Yeah? If you're not raising your hand, raise your hands. This is all on camera. Lisa, for how many years now? 7 years has led our kids department. And we have a phenomenal kids department upstairs. I can't list all of the things they do because honestly, little kids scare me. But things like Messy Play Sundays, the Sunday school, the summer camps that she puts on, time and time again, Lisa absolutely knocks it out of the park. But the reality is, as our church continues to grow younger, which it is, that means more and more young members, more little ones, are going to be put into this church. And they need to have good, accurate biblical training, teaching, and community that they can grow up in. And so our first commitment to you guys as a church is we will continue to do everything that we can to put on a stellar kids program every Sunday and every Wednesday. Every single time that you guys walk into this building, there will be a place for your kids that we can continue to invest, develop, and grow. Because we know that there is no greater gift to the church than the next generation. I'm going to go out of order, but the next thing that we are part of our vision is our midweek program. Now, last time I spoke, we kind of talked about our midweek program. But we believe that we need to continue to invest in marriages, men and women of our congregation. Now, I talked last time, and so we're not going to go through this whole stat sheet of how impressive midweek has been. But let me tell you, lives are being changed every single Wednesday. Every single Wednesday, we open the doors, and there is a new family, a new member, a new person raising their hand, a new person that wants to get baptized, a new person that wants to get plugged in. Wednesday nights are not just a thing that we're doing to fill up your schedule. They are an opportunity for a family's life to be changed forever. And so we are going to make a commitment to you that we are going to make sure that our Wednesday night programs is not only worth your time, but it's worth you investing into and you continuing to bring your community to. We are going to invest into fathers, into men, into women, into young and old. It doesn't matter. There's going to be a place for you here at Refuge. And we are going to do that through our midweek programs. Guys, midweeks is so encouraging to me. How exciting is it that we continue to see people raise their hand and say, I want to get baptized. I want to give my life to Christ. I want to serve in the church. This is now things that they are making decisions for that will change eternity. That's right. And it's all because we stepped outside of our comfort zone and said, hey, we'll open the doors of the church on a Wednesday night. Can I tell you, when we talked about this, we were afraid that no one would show up. We're like, are we just doing something to do something? Friends, if you haven't been to midweek, I challenge you to show up because they're so worth it. We sing 2 songs in the beginning, just 2. And there is so much power in those 2 songs. It'll be worth your time. 10 minutes of just being in God's presence will be everything you need. Now, the last part, Zach, help me out. Everyone give it up for Zach. Just carry it up right here. No. Carry the big board. Yeah. Give it up for Zach. Great job. Nailed it, dude. The last part is our youth. Now, I'm a little biased, but I kind of like the youth department. I think the youth pastor is a pretty cool guy. One of the things that we did when we first started the youth ministry here was we decided that we were going to take a picture of every student that comes into our youth ministry. It's a part of our check-in process. To be honest, the reason that we did it was because I wanted to put a name to a face and I wanted to be able to pray for the students. In the past 2 years, this is all of the students that have walked into our door. We have filled a board with the amount of students that have walked in here. Now, I didn't bring this board up to impress you with the numbers of students that have come into this place. What I did was I wanted to show you that each one of these students represents a family. Each one of these students represents a family. And because of that, I will continue to do everything that I can to make sure that the teenagers of this city and the surrounding cities hear about Jesus. 2 weeks ago, we launched a Christian club at Manteca High. We are now preaching the gospel on a public high school campus. We will continue to fight for the next generation because these students matter. And as I was preparing for this message, I started looking at some of the stories on this board, and I think it's funny that the very first picture on here is Jaden Clark. Jaden has taken the call and decided that he is going to pursue what God has called him to do. Now, it wasn't always easy. The first couple weeks were rough. But I am so incredibly proud of this young man. And you keep looking through all of the stories and all of the testimonies. We have Savannah's up here. We have Xavier. We have Isaac, you're up here. We have Eric and Brant. We have all of the Peyton, Lily, Zach. And then you get to this row. And this row, there's this picture right here. And I challenge you guys to come look at it afterwards. And I need to wrap up. But this is a picture of a kid named Jason Singh. Jason Singh is about 7 feet tall, and he's Muslim. Now, if you guys have been around the youth group, you guys have seen him before. But this one day, I decided that I was going to walk through our locker room because I'm a football coach. It's not just weird. I didn't just decide to walk through a locker room. But I decided I was going to hand out these invite cards to all of my team. And so I start handing them out and whatever. I'm like, hey, we have free pizza. We're doing a giveaway. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. Be there, be there, be there, be there, be there. And then all of a sudden, I round the corner and Singh is standing there. Now, I have this weird moral dilemma inside of me. I knew what his faith was. I knew where he stood on everything. Do I invite him or do I not? Do I put him in an awkward situation where I don't know what to do? And so finally, I just decided I'm his coach, whatever, I'll just send it. I'll give it to him, and I'll see what happens. I did not expect for this kid to come. And so I handed it to him, went on. That night, Singh shows up. I'm shocked, utterly shocked that Singh is there. We take a picture of him. He's actually he doesn't even fit in the border of the picture, which is pretty funny. And Singh comes and he absolutely loves it. He has a great time. We had a car bash that night, and we had some giveaways. And, of course, we had pizza because youth ministry without pizza, what is it? And then I got up there and I preached a message. And can I be honest with you? I have no idea what I preached. Couldn't tell you. I know it was about Jesus. And so afterwards, Singh comes up, gives me a hug. He's having some fun. They're playing basketball. And then he disappears. He's gone. So the next day at football practice, I'm like, Singh, where'd you go? And he goes, my parents, they came and got me. Yeah, and I was like, is everything okay? I didn't mean to get you in trouble. And he goes, my mom found out that I went to a church, and so she came and she picked me up, and she started hitting me with a broom. Now, before you go call CPS, there's a big kid, and it was a small broom. And they decided that he needed to go and find their religious ruler, their religious leader. And she wanted him to go repent for what he had done. To go confess the fact that he dares step foot in a Christian church. And so he goes and he talks to, I don't know what their imam? He goes and talks to their imam. And the imam says, what do they teach? And he tells them what they taught and what we talked about and all that kind of stuff. And he goes, did you have a good time? And he goes, yeah, I really had a good time. And the imam looks at him and goes, if you're getting something out of it, go back. Guys, if it wasn't for this place, Singh would never hear the gospel. He would never have an opportunity to hear the gospel. If it wasn't for things like our campus club, I can't tell you how many students might not ever step foot in a church because they feel like it would burn down the second that they walked in. But instead, we get to, Refuge gets to, because we believe in families. And I don't care how we reach the family, whether we reach them from the teenagers or we reach them for the parents, they matter. And because of that, we are going to continue to invest and make this a key staple of our vision moving forward, because we know that if the family can come to Jesus, generations change forever. And so I have to wrap up. The band's going to come back out and kind of play. Ushers, get ready. Next week, Pastor Dave is going to roll out this entire thing and wrap a bow on it called We Are Refuge. I am super excited about all this. I know that things are going to be completely new, and there's going to be some questions, and Pastor Dave is going to answer all of them, and it's going to be great. But what I wanted to leave you guys with today is this: the vision that God has put on side of our hearts. That vision will come to pass. But it comes down to us. How fast does that vision get completed? Because the reality is, families will continue to matter for the rest of eternity. Missions will continue to matter. Memberships and churches and all of those things will continue to matter. But for me, in this spiritual climate of where we're at, where there are revivals breaking out around the nation, I want Refuge to be an epicenter where we can look at every place, or look at our community and say, we will go out, we will be the ones, we are going to be the epicenter because we believe that God moves through us just as much as he moves in Kentucky. The same God here is the same God in Kentucky. And we don't have to have 24-hour prayer services to do it. If they break out, cool. I like sleeping, so I won't be there the entire time. But our revival doesn't stay in this place. See, the thing that's happening in Kentucky is just an encounter until they leave. Until someone leaves and spreads Jesus around the world, it's just an encounter. The revival can start here too. And it starts with our church, our missionaries, and our families. And so the ushers are going to come, and I ask that you guys spend some time and give your tithe, but this is how I want to wrap up today. The band's going to sing as the ushers go, and once the band is done, or once you've gotten your tithe in the plate, I want the head of a household, whoever that is, the head of the household, I want you to come up, and some of my students will be down here, and they're going to hand you a VIP bracelet. We give this to every first-time guest when they walk into our youth ministry for the first time. And I want you to take this home and begin to think about how you're going to partner with us moving forward. We've laid out the vision. It's there for you. But over the next week, and as we enter into next week, we're going to talk about how this church body, this family, how we can buy into the vision of God. And so I want you to take this with you. Because I believe that with your partnership, with the things that we can do together, I will hand out thousands and thousands and thousands of these. Amazon will not be able to deliver them fast enough. Take that, Jeff. But if you are a head of a household, will you come and take this and begin to pray over the next week about how you are going to take the skills that God has placed inside of you, inside of your family, and how you are going to implement them into this family. Because the two families are not separate, they are one. And so the ushers are going to go. Once the ushers pass you, come up, come grab one of these. We need to wrap up. As you leave today, you will be handed a magazine. That magazine lays out our entire vision and what it costs to do our vision. And Pastor Dave will talk about all of that next year. I just want to get into your hands a week early so you guys have some time to think about it and pray about it. I know that we got to wrap up, but this is how I want to end today. Because I know this family is going to change the community. This family is going to change Manteca, Ripon, Stockton, Tracy, and one day we're going to look back in 10 to 15 years and go, do you remember when we started this thing? Do you remember it? It started with a dream. No. It started with a vision. And visions always come to pass. So I'm going to pray. The ushers are going to go. And once the ushers have passed, come grab one of these, and we will wrap up the service from there. Jesus, thank you so much for the fact that you have placed us in a family. I know that for some of us, that family is broken. For some of us, we feel like families bring more hurt than they do comfort. But Jesus, that was never your intention. And so family, I pray for restored families today. I pray for prodigal sons to come home. for sons and daughters to be raised in the ways of the Lord, for husbands and wives to reconnect, and for individuals that they continue to pursue you with all that they have. Jesus, thank you for the fact that Refuge isn't just a church, but it is a church family. And Holy Spirit, empower us to continue to do the good work that you have started. Father, you are too good to us. And I am so excited for what you have placed on our heart for 2023. So in this moment, be with us. Bless the offering. Bless my friends. And bless my family. Amen.